Today, we are very honored to have guest speakers Ms. Amy Kong, advisor at JobsRnR, and Mr. Simon Lee, the director of JobsRnR. Amy has over 25 years of experience in human resource management and has taken a variety of strategic HR management roles in renowned international organizations, such as JP Morgan and Standard Chartered. And Simon is a serial entrepreneur heavily involved in HR technology and has very long years of experience in running conventional recruitment business and achieved great success in insurance business. Amy and Simon are going to talk about talent management from an employer's perspective. They will discuss critical issues regarding the identification, retention, and nurturing of young talents who can contribute to the sustained development of businesses. And this lecture comprises with a 40-minute input session and a 15-minute discussion towards the end. You are encouraged to type on the chat anytime, any questions you have as Amy and Simon speak. We will take your questions all together after the input session. You're welcome to type your questions in your preferred language for easier typing, but we will take those questions in English to cater for the non-Chinese speaking audience in this room. In addition, in the discussion session, you will also have an opportunity to raise for the questions for the guests. And I'm now typing the rules of engagement in the room. Also, for those of you who registered for ILP, please remember to fill out the online evaluation form on or before the 17th of April, which is this Friday. The link of the form is now copied to the chat. So make sure to fill this out on time. It will be displayed again towards the very end of this event. And that's all for housekeeping. Before the lecture begins, Dr. Francis Cheung, head of the Department of Applied Psychology, also the module leader of this course, Personnel Psychology, would like to deliver a brief welcoming. Dr. Cheung, please.
Thank you, Calvin. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the very good opening, because I guess you have basically talk about the things that I want to share with the students. And of course, in this lecture, I hope that my students in the personal psychology and of course other students at Lingnan can benefit from this webinar. To achieve organizational success, I guess human resources is actually very important, and that's why in most of the organizations they are trying to attract and retain different human resource and talent. So that's why if you want to understand what exactly is the meaning of talent management, I guess we are very lucky tonight because we got two very seasoned professionals to share with us their wisdoms on how to make it happen. So say for instance how this talent supports the organizational successes and how do we make that happen. So I hope that Ms. Amy Kwong, of course, and of course our other guest, Mr. Simon Lee, will be sharing with us their experience in different working with different organizations and try to give us some hints on how to understand this very important concept. So I'm sure that everyone will be benefit a lot from this sharing tonight. And without further ado, please join me to welcome our guests tonight, Ms. Amy Kong and Mr. Simon Lee. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Francis. Simon and I actually have hoped to meet everyone in person. So it has been planned for quite a while. So I think I'm hearing some feedback. So may I suggest the participants to put on mute? That will help us to reduce the feedback. Okay, thank you. So perhaps let's take a look at the agenda for today's session. So we're going to cover a few areas, including the whole cycle, covering talent acquisition, talent review, and also what are the things we need to pay attention to in terms of preparing ourselves for the future of work. So just now, Kevin has given a very good introduction of Simon and myself, and just to recap a few things. So I've got over 25 years of experience, mainly in the financial industry. So working in banks and insurance companies. So my background, academic background, I've got a master's degree in human resources management, but also I have just finished a postgraduate course on counseling, family therapy counseling. I'm an accredited mediator and I'm also an executive coach. Simon, would you like to say a few words? Simon?
Thank you so much, Dr. Francis, Jen, Kelvin, and Amy. Yeah, personally, I am an entrepreneur, but before being an entrepreneur, I was working as well, working in the finance industry as well. So previously, I had some footprints in companies like Bloomberg, UBS, other asset management companies. But afterwards, I founded our first conventional recruitment company, also focused on taking finance recruitment. Later on in 2018, which is 2 years ago, we founded a HR technology recruitment platform, named the JobsRnR. We aim for helping our talents or candidates or youngsters to have a career transformation. So basically for students like you guys, we try to bring you guys a more insights, of the realistic world, realistic job environment. As we believe, the very first job of your career is very critical. It's going to be influencing your entire career very much. So my first advice of this webinar is you try to understand, you try to understand more about the realistic work environment. The job market, so we can get well prepared for yourself, and then you can have a great start.
Yeah, and hopefully by the end of this session, maybe not everybody, but some of you maybe we want to start a career in the HR field, HR management field. So we've got a solid pipeline of talents. So for the opening, we talk about the cycle. We're going to look at this whole cycle in a later slide. But before we begin, we need to understand the whole process quite often start with talent acquisition. So and it is a very important part of the talent management activities. So quite often you hear about the two terms, talent management and strategic talent management. So it's interchangeable, but the main difference between the two is for talent management, we talk about all the processes relating to attracting, retaining, developing talents. And the major goal of all the activities is to support the business growth. Whatever plans the organization will have, the activities is to achieve that goal. However, for strategic talent management, the whole process quite often is managed at the top, really the top level organization. We all talk about the headquarters level. So people involved will be the group CEO or the regional managing director at that level. And it is part of the business plan. So it's not a standalone plan. So before everything begins, everything needs to tie back to the business plan for the organization. So that's the major difference. We talk about the two major levels, different levels of the activities. And of the whole presentation, this is a very important slide to understand what are we talking about exactly when we talk about talent management. Is everything involved in attracting, retaining, developing talents. So you will see on the slide all the bubbles. These are the critical, typical HR activities you see in all organizations. However, I think for the more advanced organizations, you will often hear them talking about the workforce planning. That is what I've mentioned just now, the business planning. So with the business plan, then the next thing to do is to look at the workforce planning. To do workforce planning is to look at the overall workforce needs. And then you understand, okay, what are the critical pivotal roles you're going to focus on? What are critical skills or critical knowledge you need to have in the workforce in order to ensure sustainable growth? Then you start the recruiting. So I think quite often this is the gap, is people do not look at the overall picture and they start recruiting, and then and so year after year or month after month, they're still facing the same gaps. They do not do a proper planning beforehand. And then once you have identified the talents, is to onboard them. That is, we talk about employee experience. Employee experience is the first moment of contact with the talent. It leaves them with an impression, or why do I have to join your organization? For what purpose? And then you go through onboarding, performance management, training and performance management, performance support, then compensation and benefits, etc., etc. These activities are, so although it's presented like this is interconnected. So they are happening at the same time, and they're all interrelated, and is very important part to do a great job. So, however, at the end of the day, whatever we do, we need to revisit and ask the question, the activities we're doing now, are they linked back to the business objectives, the most important objectives we have for the organization? If we are doing something that is not connected, it's just paper exercises, administrative exercises, it has little value or little relevance. So very important thing to understand is whatever we do in an organization, we have to bear in mind the strategic objective in terms of developing our talents. So I'm going to talk about the practical, just like what Simon says, today we're not talking about philosophy or theories, but what I'm going to share with you are the actual world, what's happening. So the slide you saw just now, you talk about all the critical activities that must be mastered well in an organization. And in the coming few slides, I'll talk about the common pitfalls. What are some of the things people quite often not doing well? You start with the HR functions, the whole setup and actual the actual workings within an HR department. You will see that if you one day are going to join the HR department or in any organization, you quite often see this kind of structure. So they are divided by sections or departments, and each doing their own things. They may have a common objective, however, they are not providing an oversight in terms of monitoring or measuring the connectedness. And this is something that I think a lot of organizations are still struggling with, even up to today. And the challenges is because people are not connected, so we may be duplicating our efforts, and we're not being able to respond to changing needs. So information collected during the recruitment process, for instance, they are not shared with the learning development team. So a lot of critical or valuable information is missed because of that. And the administrative processes, they're disconnected and they're cumbersome. So there are a lot of paperwork, and they are, because of the lack of systems or platform, or integrated platform. And a lot of work is redundant or of little value. And they're not capturing employees' demand because the setup for many organizations is still quite administrative. So the heavy administrative burden kind of dilute the focus. Instead of focusing on people, developing people, or understanding what they need, the focus has been shifted on creating paperwork and etc., etc. And the cost, of course, is quite heavy. If you want to overcome all these problems, I mean, inevitably, investment has to be made. So it's an example to show you how the things can be connected. So I'm using the example of the GE model. So the highlight of this model is that they highlight a very important concept, is the human capital value chain. That is, whatever you do is to create that big value. And talent management, of course, as I said, is all interconnected, but within that value chain, there's a dedicated focus on talent development, and that covers a few major critical talent activities, including talent review, succession planning, and learning experiences. That is, and the whole setup, I think, is highlight one thing is to have the strategy, create the focus, and then continue to look for areas for improvement. So under each section or department, it has highlighted the major areas of value creation. So it's a very clean, interconnected model. So there are many models in the market, but this is quite a good one. So anyone interested in understanding the HR setup, this can be a good reference point. So if you want to see how well the talent management function of an organization is working, you can ask these questions. Then you understand, what are they doing? Are they doing enough or relevant enough or sufficient enough to achieve that goal? So some of the things we may ask is, have there been particular talent issues or gaps identified in the planning process? And is there a scientific or objective process for identifying what we call high potential staff or talent? Then in terms of developing them, are they given one size fit all kind of development, or are they tailor-made to fit the different needs? Then you can ask, are there particular objectives? For instance, quite often you will hear people say, we have a target percentage to meet, that is X% of the talent of the total population has to be talent. So that means when you hire someone, you need to not just focus on the technical skills, you also need to think about the potential for future growth of the person, of that new employee, so that at the end that you're not just hiring normal employees, you're actually hiring future talents for the organization. And the last question we have is, a lot of organizations these days, they will have regular employee engagement survey. So the survey will give you results such as the overall engagement scores of the workforce, but you can also do different analytics. For instance, you can look at the engagement scores of particular critical talent pool or certain strata of the talent pool. So you can focus on the specific areas you want to look at. Then I'm going to dive into the critical talent management activities. So these are the things that common activities for all talent management organizations that they have to deliver. So first one is the talent review. So talent review at least is done once a year, but the more robust process will at least do twice a year. Some organizations may even do it quarterly. So it depends on the nature of the business and also the size of the organization as well. So at least there will be once, this is a once a year activity. But again, it's everything that is bound to have we'll see challenges. So what are some of the common challenges we see in the talent management, talent review process? Quite often, because it's not managed, there are different things is lacking. So if you don't have all the tools on hand, which I'm going to cover in the later slides, then it will be just a gather around discussion, and based on quite often get input based on biases or impressions, and then you nominate someone. So the robustness of the review process is critical. It's lack of standards. So if we don't have a clear definition of what does talent mean in the organization, then it's very difficult to evaluate whether the quality of the comments or the evaluation or the observations are based on solid grounds. Then after discussion, very critical is how do you capture those comments? And it's a nightmare. I can tell everyone it's a nightmare without a system. But even up till now, a lot of organizations don't have a talent management system. So every year they're still using Excel spreadsheets and paper process to manage, and it's a nightmare. So the whole talent review session It takes a few months to prepare. So, and then you have a few rounds of discussions. And then afterwards, the comments quite often, if not captured properly, it will be lost. And then you don't have continuity. So, and that impact on the follow through, because whatever discussion within the talent review process, you need to capture and be able to track and measure to support the talent development. So a common tool I'm going to share with you is a 9-box grid. I believe it's developed by the BCG consultant over 30 years ago. So, but it's still very much in use in a lot of organizations. It's measuring two things, potential and performance. So we look at, it's kind of prediction. You kind of predict the potential of the person, whether it is high, medium, or low. And then performance is based on current observation. Something you need to present is the evidence. But on what grounds are you making those observations? If you say it's a high potential, high performance staff. And for more robust organization, they will come up with another tool is the definition. So instead of just a high 9-box grid, they actually will specific guidelines, for instance, performance rating. So for the example I'm quoting here is the performance rating for the last 2 years. And then also is, the other thing is whether the person has headroom for, how much headroom the person has for growth is being observed. And then a more robust tool is the leadership competency model. This is quite useful because it is not just based on simple impression. It's actually crafted the different critical competency areas that the organization has in terms of developing their leadership. So here, in the example here, we see entrepreneurship, valuing people, driving change, functional expertise, etc., etc. And then this also has different levels relating to the seniority of the people, of the staff. So for the people who are in the most senior roles, of course, they're expected to be able to function at strategic level. While the officers level or the entry level staff, probably a lot of them will be following instructions and executing according to the processes, etc., etc. So this is a very detailed definition. But the challenge for I've observed is people to use this tool, they need to be very familiarized with, very familiar with the definition. And quite often you'll see in the real world is you have this tool, but people are not digesting it fully. So if you don't have this knowledge and you go into the room for a talent review session, you're talking different languages. And so this is something that I think HR function can help. First of all, before you have a talent review session, you need to educate the manager, especially a new one. The newly joined managers who have no knowledge of what the competency model looks like, and you ask them to nominate a talent, they won't be able to do it. So the first thing that I would do is to actually train the managers. So it's not the HR doing the job. The HR department, we do not know everybody, but the line manager is observing performance behaviors on a day-to-day basis. But they need to understand what are the standards. How do you actually measure performance? And this is very important because throughout the whole employee life cycle, you need that knowledge. And the output, we talk about the output. So after all the discussions, what happens is you will map each and every one on the map, looking at the potential and performance. So you see a map like this. So this is the first step. And second step is once you have the people identified as a top talent, we talk about this the top right-hand corner, upper right-hand corner. Those people are the top talents. Then you have a development plan. And this development plan is for each and every one of them. You will review them on a regular basis, actually noting what exactly has happened in terms of supporting the growth. With normal timeline is at least 12 to 24 months. So a lot of this data, again, as I said, is the common challenge for a lot of organizations. There's no system. So these are captured on paper, and then year after year you have to transfer the data back to another piece of paper. So this is something I think for a leading HR organization to have is to have the system in place. Look organization so what are some of the things we should be expecting? Say we talk about the future of work. So we understand a lot of changes are happening, and because of technology, because of the different things happening around the world, we understand the roles will not be the same. So that happens in a lot of industries. So talk about banking industry is completely changed in terms of the retail banking, etc., etc. So we expect them to continue to change. And the forecast we talk about here, through some studies, we're saying by 2022, almost 54% of the employees require significant upskilling. So different countries are doing different things. Some governments are more involved. So Singapore, for example, they have embarked on an upskilling program for everybody in the last few years. So everybody within Singapore, they're given some funding to learn different things, knowledge, etc., etc. So they have a vision in place. Hong Kong is very much up to the individuals and organizations to make that decision. We need to learn now and get ready for the future. So something I want to share with you is the term VUCA. VUCA is a term that is used by US military in the 90s when USSR was off. So it's something during that period, overnight, with no one expect that to happen. So, but overnight, USSR just disappear. And so people were talking about ambiguity, uncertainty. So that model came about around that time. And this is the definition. But before we look into this, I'm going to share with you a YouTube video. So just give me 1 minute to set this up. So are you seeing the screen now? Just want to make sure. Okay, so VUCA is an acronym with covering 4 different areas. Volatility, we talk about, basically we talk for volatility, we talk about change and how you react to it. A very important thing is to create, for leaders, is to create that vision, because vision provides focus and stability. So things can be changing very fast, but as a leader, you are the person to kind of steer, help the whole organization to steer the direction. The second thing is uncertainty. We talk about things that a lot of unknowns. We do not, sometimes there are things that we do not understand, is to be able to accept the fact that we won't be able to understand everything. So it's critical to have the ability to appreciate, to understand, but also embrace differences in terms of opinions, in terms of selections or things people value. Then we talk about complexity. Complexity here is the interconnectedness. But a lot of things, we talk about different systems, ecosystems, or systems in operation. We are not working on our own anymore. We're talking about, to survive, we need to connect with multiple parties, more than before. And the thing is, to be able to manage that, you need to have clear focus, but also flexibility and creativity. Then the last one is ambiguity. Ambiguity is like walking in the mist, but still being able to make out a path and continue the journey. So being agile, being able to make decisions without full information, and be innovative when you find a solution, in finding the solution. I think these are the things we need to get ready or have to build up, to strengthen, in order to prepare ourselves for the future work. So before the beginning of this session, we talk about getting ready if you are applying for your first job. So this is something you have to bear in mind, is the workplace is going to be changing. Things that happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we expect them to change. So we were talking about having physical offices. We're going to ask the questions. So if remote working is a new reality, so how much need do we have? So things like this is going to happen. And a very important thing is to bear in mind is over the past 40, 50 years, organization setup is based on the model coming from the manufacturing world. So it's important to have a central control. You manage the workforce through rules, through tight control and central monitoring. However, I think things have changed, the business model has changed, that it's almost impossible to have that central control mentality, because things need to react. You need to react rapidly to the changing environment. So if decision making sits at headquarters, the local units or the country units will not be able to respond. They're not empowered to respond. So leadership to prepare for future work is to how much empowerment are you going to allow and to give to the individuals. So each and every one of them taking responsibility, sharing responsibilities based on a common goal. And to echo that is a very important part of the telemanagement work is talk about developing leadership, developing talents. Quite often in the past, L&D focus on building functional skill sets. We talk about very static job roles. You have a job description. You don't expect them to change rapidly or overnight. So you can have regular or very standard curriculum. Even in commercial world, we have curriculum. So we build people, we develop people to fit certain roles. However, we understand that the job role, the scope of responsibilities can change very rapidly, and the tools and knowledge, and the skills required can be quite different. So some of the things that we are looking as to how to manage that learning process. So it's not the traditional way of working. So we understand that the more effective learning is through self-reflection. Quite often is through accumulation of critical experiences. And how can you make that real? And so challenge number one for the work, technology. Technology has a big impact on the things we're doing, we understand. And AI, for instance, so this is a statement from the IBM chairman, who says that I expect AI to change 100% of jobs in the next 5 to 10 years. So it may not be relevant to all industries, but quite to certain industries, especially the financial industries. For instance, we're seeing a lot of impact that's been created because of this. And I think this is going to have an even wide impact when things continue to evolve. And the skills, because of that, people will often ask the question, are we going to lose all our jobs? And the answer is no, because technology helps us to alleviate from the burden for the manual work. However, it still requires jobs will require skill sets that is critical for the future development, especially we look at for innovation, creativity, ethics, integrity, communication, working as teams. These are the things that cannot be replaced by machines and or other forms of intelligence right now. So we understand we cannot predict how things will evolve in the next 100 years, but at least for now, we're not seeing that technology is going to replace all jobs. But so I think some of the areas we can highlight is being able to work across boundaries, being agile, being able to adapt to change, communicate effectively, etc., etc. These are the skill sets they are all very important for the future work. So we talk about talent management. 4 things we often will say, either the 4 different strategies: to build, to buy, to borrow, or bridge. However, I think this may not be enough when things evolve. Is you may, for instance, we may not be able to buy in the market even if you have the money. And because of the pace of change, you may not be able to build it within a short period of time. So what you should be doing now is to continue to grow the workforce, so to get ready for the change. And this is the thing that the model copying from the IBM Institute is to look at 3 different things. To highlight the transparency, looking inside and out, that talks about creativity, innovation, and making it personal. That is, you don't offer the standard one-size-fits-all solutions. You need to chunk it up so that people have the options to choose what they need, and at a time that's convenient for them. This is the page, kind of a snapshot of the talent systems available in the market for the past 20 plus years. So you can see that things have evolved, but it's still not at the ideal stage, because I think the pain for people working in the talent management function is these systems we're seeing here, they're not integrated. So you have systems for recruitment, you have systems for payroll, you have benefits, you have system for performance management, but they do not talk. So I think for the coming future, the market is really in hot demand is the integrated systems, especially on capturing feedback and evaluation. It can be development evaluation, performance evaluation, and then you can look at allowing the organization to look at the whole picture instead of piecemeal, providing just piecemeal information. Then a very interesting topic that has continued to pop up is talking about the changing demographics. I think the coming generation, they will be facing a very interesting picture. Is by 2020, that is right now, you have 5 generations working together in the workplace. This is a very interesting moment because you have people coming from different ages and they have very different preferences. So why we need to pay attention to this is you want to connect people. You want them to work seamlessly as one team. So understanding the differences is very important. So this is looking at it from an age perspective. Of course, there are other dimensions like culture, gender, etc. But today we're talking about the generations dimensions here. So this is an estimation by the US that is by 2026, the age population distribution will look like this. So you will see the millennials and the Gen Z. They will be the dominating group. And they are different. So we're going to look at these few slides. We're going to look at the characteristics of each of the age group. Then we look at the motivations, the different motivations they have. Then we look at the engagement strategy for each and every one of them. So this is some suggestions. This is not saying that you must do it. There's some ideas that I'm throwing out here that you may consider. So I think for the picture here, characteristics is, I think the background explains everything because the silent generation of the baby boomers, they experienced a tough period. It's because of World War or the post-war period. So people focus on the basic needs. So job security is very important. If you look at the aspiration area, people focus on the basic needs, job securities. However, for Gen X and the millennials or Gen Z, I think the whole situation is we talk about the work-life standards or the standards of living is quite different from the 2 generations beforehand. So they will consider other things are more important. So, for instance, millennials, they want freedom, they want flexibility. However, for the baby boomers of silent generation, they're very much used to the command and control environment. So, for job security, they are very used to the systems and the control from the manufacturing world. However, for the new generation, Gen Z and millennials, they have a different way of looking at life. So again, that brings challenges to the workplace in terms of management. So if you're managing a workforce that has a growing population of millennials and Gen Z, and you're still having a command and control type of management, then you face a challenge of how do you engage this group of staff. Then we look at the purpose. When people look for a career, we're seeing more and more emphasis put on focus, on purpose for the younger generation. They're looking for instance, for millennials, they're looking for a meaningful job. So it's not just giving a list of tasks for them to do and tell them rules. They need to understand, why do we need to have these? What value are we creating for the society? So these are some of the things that for a diverse workforce, from a talent management perspective, you need to take care of. So you're not talking about homogeneous group, you're really talking about the different groups within the workforce, and you need to have different programs to fit the different needs. So engagement strategy, part of a very important activity for talent management is to retain and engage. So you have engagement strategy to keep people motivated. So for instance, people may be looking for reward as recognition. They may consider reward as important things in terms of recognition, but there are also people looking for career for development and growth. So they measure the success by how much traction they have gained throughout their career. So they look for milestones, critical milestones, when you talk to them about career growth. So this is need to bear in mind the different dimensions to consider when you develop an engagement strategy. So again, it's not one size fits all, but you need to have multiple dimensions to cover the different needs. The whole employee experience, a telemanagement successful telemanagement strategy, we cover the full cycle of employee experience from the moment they first get into contact with the employees, or sometimes even before you approach a candidate. So it's a general public, what kind of image, what kind of a branding image you create, and then the first point of contact, and then onboarding. So the whole employee life cycle, what kind of experience you want to create for them, from the different aspects we're showing here, creating meaningful work. They have opportunities for hands-on involvement, to give them an environment so that they feel productive, and there's opportunities for continuous growth. And then the leaders at the top, they listen, they explain, they create the focus, they explain the mission. And then the last thing, being taken good care of, those are health and well-being. So it's not just talking about medical insurance. We talk about the mental health, we talk about physical fitness, financial well-being, etc., etc. So all these things is kind of a map for anyone who wants to create an exciting employee experience. These are the areas that the telemanagement function will be looking at. So I think that's about it for today's presentation. So Kevin and Simon. I think Simon,
yes. Hello.
Simon, sorry.
Hello, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Amy. Let me sum up a little bit of Amy's wonderful presentation just now. So, fellow students, let me ask you, why do you think Professor Francis Cheung arranged this lesson for you guys to understand the talent management, organization structure, VUCA, leadership, etc. So why? Yeah, I'll give you a few seconds to think.
I think you can raise your hand.
Right. You can ask questions anytime through the chat. But I want you guys to think about how does this topic relate to your life? Okay, relate to your career, relate to your family. Okay. So first of all, of course, okay, this is a academic course. Talent management is always a big topic, within our academic environment. In terms of inside the MBA school, a lot of people, experts, scholars cover the management subject. So this is a part of it. Second of all, we believe most of you guys, I can say 99% of you guys who's in this class are going to be leaders in the organization, or you're going to start up your business, or you're going to be or even you're not going to be a corporate leader or start up your own business. You're going to be the leader of your family. So what Amy has lectured us just now is a very good competency model for you guys, for all of us, to use to implement in our organization. So you may have a wonderful career ahead of you. You may have a relatively normal career path. But for most of us, you're going to have a family. Okay, you're going to be the family, the leader of the family, and you're going to have a certain level of assessment for your, for your husband or wife, or especially your kids. How are you going to evaluate the performance of your kid? How are you going to evaluate the performance of your husband? So this is some kind of insight that Amy has shown us. Okay. So the third point is most relevant and most urgent for you guys to think about is how can you move up the corporate ladder? Okay. How are you going to be successful? How are you going to be a VP, okay, vice president of a certain MNC? MNC means a multinational company. So how are you going to be a successful person in the commercial world after you have graduated? Some people we have known, a lot of them, like they have been very successful in their career in just 5 to 10 years. Yeah, it's possible. So what are the clues Amy has shown us? So for me, the takeaway is, what the major takeaways is, rule number 1 is what? You're gonna know the marking scheme, like your exam. How each our department evaluate your performance, right? So from your understanding by yourself, wow, you think you performed very well, you're going to achieve a 12-month bonus this year. But what other things, others, your colleagues, your teammates, your supervisors, you're not thinking the same way, right? So first of all, rule number 1 is you're going to have the understanding of the model, benchmark of the evaluation model of your organization. So what is rule number 2? Rule number 2 is you're going to have a sustainability. Amy has said very well, which is it is not a evaluation model for just 10 days, 1 month. It's going to be for years to determine whether you are a talent, whether you are a top talent, you are a high profile, you are a low level, low profile talent, or you are just a nobody in that organization. Okay. You have to keep going. Okay. Being motivated every single day. So boys and girls, for the coming 30 years, okay, maybe not 30 years, 20 years, in the coming 6,000 days, okay, after you have graduated, you can actually keep yourself motivated every day. You have to keep going, keep doing the things you aim to achieve, okay, in order to be successful. Okay, so so Amy has just demonstrated some wonderful models that organizations have been using. Okay, another thing I want to mention is the leadership. We believe most of you, many of us, okay, are going to be leaders. So how to sharpen your leadership skills is also very crucial. And also, Amy has mentioned about the learning culture of organization. How are you going to motivate yourself to keep learning? This is another thing that you can consider. So for my part, I'm going to talk about more on the recruitment side. Before you can get into that organization, how you can get recruited, right? You move up the ladder, but how you can get reach of that ladder, right? So first of all, I'm going to talk about the environment, the current practice of the job market. So in the past, we have two major channels for recruitment. One is the conventional job board, like JobsDB, Monster, Indeed. Corporates and organizations post their job openings up there and then recruit. Okay. The second thing is a lot of them. Okay. But nowadays, corporates understand they have some problems. Okay. Number one is the conventional job boards cannot entertain the leads because they cannot show their differentiations of each opening. Okay. Point number two, for the recruiters, for the professional headhunters, they charge more, so they charge high fees. So in terms of the budget, they have to some sort of sacrifice some of their budget into their recruitment fees. So nowadays we have a lot of new solutions. We have like us, JobsRnR, like other HR technology companies like Wanted, or Wantedly.com, or yeah, you know, in China, in mainland China, we have their teams, things like that. These are new companies, okay, appear in the last 10 years, okay. We aim for providing as much information as possible for our talents to know more about the company, and know more about the organizations, so that both sides will save the time, will save their resources, will save their money, will save their to have best matches. Okay. So here's the problem. So the takeaways for you guys is we have to use which channel. Use JobsDB, Monster, those traditional conventional job posting channels, and also the new channels like JobsRnR, Wanted, or other companies that can encourage, that can allow you to have a better understanding about job. A lot of the candidates, especially for fresh graduates, they do not understand the job market very well. They just take jobs randomly, apply jobs randomly, and take offers randomly. So they start with a relatively unplanned career. Okay, this is no good. Okay, you're gonna screw up your career. So before you move on and pick a particular career, that industry. So this is my advice. So right, you can see there are a lot of channels, a lot of platforms that you can understand much more about the job market. So the next slide. So Amy, can you, yes, next slide. We can have you can see the new technology of the of interviews. So if you pick a industry or career path, you really passionate, you cannot get it. I have been doing like 10 interviews, but not because a lot of the companies these days are adopting a AI technology for recruitment. So which is they use the facial to have a analysis or person or response to each question. Okay, don't be frustrated. So practice perfect, and it is not either algorithms. Okay. Okay. So it's very advanced one. You say it was very deep, but on the other hand, some of many of our HR experts criticize, saying that of suitable candidates. So stay positive, you guys. Just keep trying. Failing in interviews, it's very common. So keep trying, and I believe all of you is going to have a very bright future. Yeah, thank you. So are we going to have the Q&A session right now?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Simon and Amy, for the very rich input. And we do have a few minutes here for questions and any comments, really. So if there are anyone who wants to raise a question, you can type it. I saw one. So from Michelle Poe, may I ask that shaping and maintaining organizational culture serves as one of the function in talent management? So yeah, would any Amy or Simon want to respond to this one?
Okay, let me take the question. So it depends on the structure of the organization. So talent management quite often will be involved, but not necessarily. So because the head of HR definitely will be involved. So because it requires the overall oversight, what we say oversight of it. And when we talk about measuring a culture, measuring the culture of the organization, we're really talking about different things, from branding that is involving the recruitment activity, but also you may have a different strategy for attracting talent, and a part of it is also measuring the culture is through the engagement activity. So you may probably have a different teams involved in the whole thing. So it really depends on the structure of the organization. But talent management quite often will be involved, as I said.
Yeah, and actually I would like to add to this question, because considering Amy's background is from an MNC and Simon's background is from a startup company. So as Amy said, big companies usually take like years to observe their young talents and to assess whether they are of any use to the company's sustained development. But how about startup companies? Because often they are newly established and they might not have enough resources to wait for young talents to grow. That's one of the challenges, right? So how would perhaps Simon would like to add on how startup companies, considering their limited resources, would deal with talent management in a more longer run, really?
Simon, are you on mute?
Can I unmute?
Hello. Sorry. I have some technical problem just now. Sorry. Kevin, may you repeat the question again?
Yeah. So basically, how will startup companies do long-term talent management given their limited resources and time?
They don't talk about long-term, first of all.
Right.
The timeline is different.
So, in terms
entrepreneurship,
of,
I think entrepreneurship is one thing.
In terms of talent management, startups mostly do not have that kind of. Oh, only one thing. Okay, in our mission, that is our company culture. So, company culture as a core. Okay, whenever we have a very strong company culture, that it's going to act as like a magnet that attract all the talents to come over. Okay, in terms of the how do we categorize or classify the talents? For startups, it's hard Okay, we do not have that kind of resources to do that. But in the mindset between the different mindset between corporates and startups is that all the startups treat our staff or employees as our partners. Okay, partners means we are seeking talents like we are seeking our wives. Okay, so that's our standard. We have to talk to them. We love them, we like them, and we love hanging out with them even after our work. We basically is like a life companion. Okay, because we have to keep our size small, team size small, so we have to be very picky in terms of our talent management, and our company culture is our key. Yeah, for corporates, it's pretty much more skill set wise. If somebody else can handle the task, then they will hire them. Yeah, I think it is the key difference.
For large corporates, I think need to bear in mind is the ultimate goal is to create a leadership team, to create a talent pool for the leadership position. For a startup, you may not have that immediate need. So for a startup, I think it's rather too early to do really the robust talent review. Is until you grow to a certain stage, kind of stabilize or more mature, then it's worth doing the job. Otherwise, focus would be on performance rather than potential.
Right.
So I guess this is something students should bear in mind when they are choosing where to serve when they graduate. I mean, despite this serious situation right now, it's important for fresh graduates really to have in mind what they want to achieve in the first few years of their career before they really enter the career market to find the suitable employer.
Things about startup is you may have a quicker career path in terms of growth because you grow with the company. So you kind of have the entrepreneurship opportunity as well. So with big organizations, you're going to face a lot of competition, as Simon has described. You are really comparing with your peers, right? Comparing with the peers in terms of performance and potential. But for startups, actually, if you perform, if you have the potential, if you're a top performer, you may actually benefit from other things. So it's really two different systems, I would say.
So are there any other questions from the floor? Okay, there's one. Any tips for getting a higher score in a digitalized interview?
First of all, I think first thing is, how do you find out what are the things people are looking for? So you don't really. I don't know. So maybe in other places, in terms of like arranging video interviews, having online assessment tools. These are things people, a lot of tools. Apart from graduate recruitment, I think a lot of them using the tools to screen out candidates. However, for normal jobs, I don't think we are relying 100% on technology yet.
Exactly. Yeah, I echo Amy's just said. For the question of how can we get more in a digitalized interview, it's hard. Different companies can use different AI technology to do the interview, and nowadays there are a lot more and more companies developing AI tools like this. I understand there are quite a number of companies in China and in mainland China, develop interviews.
I think China, this is an interesting point, because I think that I don't think China has the discrimination rules yet. But in other places, including Hong Kong and other US, I think some organizations, quite often, they are very nervous about using these online tools because they don't want to be sued.
Right, exactly. Yes.
Not
but
giving
some of the Chinese technology developed their interviews integrate with their 八字 and 风水, you know. so it is a big data, right? So
you need to validate. You need to validate. We need to go through the data, make sure.
Yeah. So you
validate reliability.
Just be yourself. My suggestion is, my advice is, just be yourself during the interview. You can't beat the system. You can't beat the algorithm. so as you can't tell which algorithm they're using, you may be just have a disadvantage because of your date of birth. So, right? So you can't tell anyway. So just be yourself. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Kevin, thank you.
Sure. So I guess it's about time because we have already overrun for 15 minutes. And thank you so much again for Amy and Simon for being here. And